Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to another interview series with our creativity and innovation leaders. And today on the line, we've got Nicole Yershon, who is someone who's worked in the creative industry field for many, many years, and who's going to give us some insights on what it's like to go through an industry that's changing rapidly. Nicole, it's lovely to have you.
It's lovely to be part of the show. Thank you.
So Nicole, why don't you give our listeners a bit of background on what your work was in the creative industries from the beginning?
Okay, from the very beginning. Okay, so from the very beginning, I was working at an ad agency, full-service ad agency called Ogilvy about 20 plus years ago. And then more recently, probably in the last 17 years, I was at Ogilvy and Mather in the UK, working across the group with a brief from the chairman to bring them into the 21st century and moving them from an analog world to a digital world. So lots of different changes happening from very early on.
I mean, you'd expect that the creative industries to be really on the forefront of everything new and different and challenging, but is that what it's really like behind the scenes?
I think behind the scenes, yes, those. I think it splits more into large organisations and organisations that need to report to the city, whether it be creative industries or any industry. They're just obviously not as agile and nimble as those that don't need to report numbers and figures. So the creative industry, its process, it's large, and there's a lot of things that take a lot of time to affect change. And Ogilvy being one of them, and obviously just not as quick and nimble as the smaller ones.
So why don't you take us back to, let's say, before the digital transformation happened that you talked about. How did a creative agency run at that point? I'm struggling to think about nowadays everything's so digital. Did things really happen like in Mad Men where people were sketching things on paper?
Yeah. That's exactly what happened, because you didn't have computers or Macs even at that time, or Facebook, or those things have only come into play with Facebook, especially, or social or mobile within the last 10 to 15 years. So before that, in the very early days, it was very much an analog world. But the companies that I worked at, Ogilvy and Simons Palmer, really pushed the boundaries in terms of creativity, and they were doing things that had never been done before. So, but obviously in going to Ogilvy 17 years ago, moving them from an analog world to a digital world, everything was paper then. And I was kind of tasked with running an edit facility and pulling out all the ABIDs and putting in final cuts, and then starting to work on digital delivery, get rid of tapes, get rid of couriers, digitize all their archives going back to the 50s. So really kind of looking at moving them from paper to a digital world.
One of the reasons why I was so keen on having you as part of the podcast is you ran what was called, I think, the Innovation Hub at Ogilvy.
The lab.
Yes, the Innovation Lab. Was this all internal work, or was this also something where clients would come and have Ogilvy think about innovation with them?
Yeah, I mean, it took a long time to build. So initially it was all about educating and inspiring. And we would do that via these semesters of learning, which would be 6 months, very kind of like a deep dive on a particular topic. And then what we would do within that, I guess, process. It was a process to innovate. We would be able to then literally innovate and do new things never done before. So it would be a 6-month process where you would see, say, take the first ever one we did about 10 years ago was streaming. So with our clients and with Ogilvy staff, I mean, there were 1,800 in London. 10 group companies across marketing communications, and lab would sit across all of them and feed them. So you would see 10 to 15 different streaming companies, because streaming was our first semester, and every single week. And then you would get a very good understanding of who was out there and who was good, bad, and different. So I've been working in that startup and understanding mentoring startups and what they're doing for a very long time and globally. So we would be working with the embassies and saying, please feed us with any companies that you have in your countries that are to do with streaming.
I'm sure
And then you would find in doing that, you would then have a very good idea of who was good, bad, indifferent outside. And then you would bring them in and you would inspire them, and you have lab lunches and show and tells, and then you would find a brand that had a problem, and streaming would be a solution. And so that happened to be Ford at the time, where the Ford chairman was speaking to all his staff, and it was pixelated and buffering. And I'd seen a company from Australia who could deliver a full HD quality stream to your desktop instantly. And it was then working with Ford and working with this new supplier, no different in the old days to working with a production company, but you were doing TV and print, whereas now you're doing live stream. But then I would get the Ogilvy staff to implement them. So therefore it would be the TV department that ordinarily would do TV, but this time they were going to do a live stream that was going to go to 22,000 desktops in 90 countries in 5 languages. So it wouldn't be a 30-second ad, it would be a 90-second film of the Ford chairman speaking to all his staff. So that's what I mean by implementation. You see who is out there, you attach it to business, and then you implement it.
It's quite fascinating to think about how that actually works from the initial stages of the technology, because anyone who's listened to the podcast for a while and who's read my stuff knows that I'm a bit of a geek at heart. I remember the very early days of streaming, when you had the likes of Real Player and Flash, and let's just say when these types of technologies were first getting started, the quality wasn't where it is today.
Exactly, but that's why we would do it as a lab job. So therefore the client would just spend 20% of their budget, perhaps, not the whole lot. It would be like an 80-20 split, and we would trial these things, and we would see whether they worked, and what the measure of success was. Is the measure of success how many people downloaded the stream? Is the measure of success pushing boundaries? Is the measure PR? Is the measure awards? So we had these 6 quite defined measures of success for labs, which we called the 6 R's. And that's how we measured innovation or R&D within labs. So it wasn't always to do with just bottom line income.
So I think this is an excellent example for any other companies out there that are thinking about innovation labs. One of the big struggles that they always face is when they want to discuss with the company leaders the importance of having a lab that's just out there trying new things. The leaders are always going to ask, how do we measure things? How do we measure the ROI? So what's your experience in that? You mentioned that there seems to be different measures of success based on the individual clients, but you had these 6 R's. What are those?
6 R's that, and there was a nice article actually written by The Telegraph, if you wanted to put that on, as a link or Google it. But my 6 R's within the labs were revenue as a little one, retention of existing staff, so people would stay because of doing work within the labs. Recruitment of new diverse talent, which is something we set up called the Rough Diamond, which was getting in alternative talent into Ogilvy. And not your usual white middle class Oxbridge educated.
Of course.
Relationships, that's my black book. Reputation, that's either kind of awards that you got because of the work that we'd done and implemented or even spoken about, and responsibility, that was giving back and mentoring and doing lots of stuff with people that wasn't necessarily going to give income, but it was the right thing to do.
Is it something that happened in Ogilvy as well? What I'm referring to the concept of measuring success and thinking about what's the return on investment. Because I'm trying to figure out whether or not the creative industries really are full of all of these zany people wearing multicolored coats all the time and riding around on unicycles, or whether or not there's a lot more business behind the scenes than people think there is.
I think that it's split into two. You have, so my old CEO, a guy called Paul O'Donnell, would understand the need for R&D or for the labs and me doing this, or, again with Rory Southern. And there were a few that got it and allowed me to flourish in the kind of 16, 17 years that I was there, and would understand that it wasn't mission critical, that it was going to bring in enormous amounts of money, and they were happy with those R's. And there are other people that literally just see it as a spreadsheet and a cost, and therefore, which is what happened with the labs and why it got shut down with the CEO who is running London right now, and with the finance director, because different people have different understanding of what R&D means and innovation, and so therefore you're not going to please everyone.
It's fascinating to see how, when leadership within company changes, when you go from someone who really has a visionary mindset and is forward-thinking, very, very often there's examples of them being succeeded by someone who's much more operations-focused.
Yeah.
And you end up seeing the desire for trying new things just fall down a sinkhole. And it's a real shame to see examples like that. And I think what you were describing seems to be along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to take the benefit of what you've learned at that time, and then keep moving forward, because that's the one thing that happens, is that change happens constantly. So you then, it's very strange, because I'm doing a VR show at the moment, and it's going to be at the Business Design Centre for 10,000 people. And a lot of the Ogilvy staff, I've noticed, because it's an Ogilvy email address, are buying tickets for it. And they're possibly the ones that then wouldn't have gone to it if it was on their doorstep and free of charge.
Of course.
So, things change all the time, and it's just how you adapt to change and how you keep moving forward and see benefit of what happened, and not negativity, because that means you're just then standing still and paralyzed. Got to keep moving forward, no matter what happens, no matter who's in charge, no matter what decisions they make, that has no impact or bearing on your life, type thing.
Do you think that something like an innovation lab is appropriate for every type of company, just in a different scale and obviously designed with their own requirements in mind? But
yeah, I do, because the rate of change is so enormous. If you would have asked me that however many years ago, I would have said no, because all you needed to worry about was directing and press ads and photography and illustration. And that was pretty much it. Now you need to understand gaming and social and AR and VR and mobile payments and blockchain and Bitcoin, and the list goes on and is endless. And you've got to be able to understand who are the players in that market, and how does that then translate to making something happen. It's just too fraught with so many things that are going on globally, and needing to keep up to speed, but also being that point person where people trust that what's happening with innovation around the world, not just in one sector and one country. And people can't do their day job, especially if they're in a large organization where they're measured by they're 100% say paid for by IBM. If you need to go to an event and understand what's happening at that event and bring that information, the outside world back in, where does that go on your timesheet?
The old classic, which department's paying for it question.
Yeah.
So if you think that every company out there would benefit from having a lab of some sort focused on innovation, what sort of advice do you have for people who are trying to get support for this idea from the senior people? What sort of things should they watch out for, and what sort of experience do you have that helps get these ideas across?
I think they need to have someone that they're working with who wants this, number one, because if they're not that bothered, then there's no point doing it. So if they is of a similar mindset, then you're kind of halfway there, because then you're working on it together. And then if you look at the different measures of success and what it is that you're striving for, are you looking to innovate with that client to just do test and learn? Are you looking to do something much bigger and product design? So really have an understanding of what measures of success that client is wanting, and then kind of like what's the problem, and then find the right solution.
Perfect. Nicole, you seem to be a bit still on the forefront of innovative things. What are the sort of things that get you excited in your field at the moment that are coming out? And the technology might still be new, it might be more advanced than people realize, but what are you excited about?
I'm excited about, and I have been for a couple of years since I saw Sir Ronald Cohen speaking, and he talks about um, affecting change with tech or with ideas by doing good. So a little bit like a Tom's Shoes type thing. So it's called social enterprise, but it's looking at, so it's not NGOs and it's not charity and it's not corporate social responsibility. It's coming up with different ideas that will solve a problem, but by doing good, but you make money from it.
Perfect. Nicole, it's been wonderful having you here. Where can people go to find out more about the work you do and whether or not you'd be able to help them as well?
Okay, just go onto NicoleYershon.com, which is my website, which shows all the different kind of things that I'm working on. And I'm also, it's quite exciting, I'm working on a book that is going to give all of these, examples of work if you're working within a large organization, if you're a bit of a square peg in a round hole, how, problems I've encountered, solutions I've put in place. So that might be helpful and useful. But also looking to bring my team back and do a lab for hire, as it just seems to be that's seems to be the question that I'm asked the most of, if we're not able to do it in house, how can we work with you and outsource it?
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm looking to do that.
We'll make sure to get all of those links down in the description below. And Nicole, it's been wonderful having you here, and I look forward to reading your book when it comes out.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Today's episode was made possible by members of our premium Deep Creativity training program. For less than the price of half a candy bar per day, you too can get world-exclusive daily exercises which push your creativity past its comfort barrier to make you better able to generate ideas in all aspects of your life and work. Invest in yourself now by going to www.ideatovalue.com/deepcreativity and using coupon code PODCAST for 25% off your first order. And don't forget that if you found this episode interesting, to like and share it, and to leave us a review in your favorite podcast player. See you again in the next episode.